We're good. Morning, everybody. Welcome to guests in the gallery and our presenters and staff and council and our newest council member, Councillor Palmatier. Welcome. Welcome to everybody to Committee of the Whole for January 10th, 2023. We have a new year. And before we get into the business of the day, we would like to acknowledge that we're meeting here today in Kesputuik, one of the 7 districts of Mi'kma'ki, homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. We are all treaty people. And we have an agenda in front of us. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Elliott, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Madeira Voss and CAO. Are there any changes?
No changes.
Or update? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda as received, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed. And we have 2 sets of minutes, one being an in-camera. And just again, for the benefit of our new member, in-camera information stays in camera. And so if you have a concern about anything in the in-camera minutes, you can share that privately with the clerks. Just a little reminder. But first, could I have somebody to move the Committee of the Whole minutes of December 6th, 2022?
Could do that.
Councillor Butler, and a seconder.
Did you want me to read that?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. A new year.
I move that the Committee of the Whole. I'm totally thrown off now because I had to ask. I move that Committee of the. Oh my gosh! I move that the minutes of December 6, 2022 Committee of the Whole be approved as circulated or amended through.
It's just a dress rehearsal. It is. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Butler, and Councillor Elliott. I think you said you'd second that. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Good. Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. And a mover to read the motion for Councillor Butler, would you like to did you put your hand up again? Somebody else. Would somebody like to move the Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes of December 6th? Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I move that the minutes of December 6, 2022 Committee of the Whole in-camera meeting be approved as circulated or amended.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Butler. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And those minutes are approved. And now we have a presentation today from the Royal Canadian Legion. We have Paul Murphy and Michael Botry, and they are all set up at the presentation table. So gentlemen, whenever you're ready.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. We're delighted to be able to make a presentation to you and catch you up with what's been going on. For so many years, it's been sitting there like a wounded duck, the old Legion, and nothing seemed to be happening, but everything was happening inside, including raising the building a foot. So in the last few months, you've seen a lot of things happening, and I'm going to start off by just quickly going through a few slides to show the progress. Just remember that what we are changing is not just a Legion, but the way in which a Legion operates. We want the Legion to be not just a drinking hole for the veterans and others, but we want it to be a place that really helps veterans live happy and productive lives. So along with that building goes a lot of new ideas for how a Legion works. And we are delighted that in the 5 years that we've been going at this, we started with 62 members. We were very reduced. We now have 154, even though we've been closed for the last 2.5 years. So I think we're looking forward to the doors being beaten down once we actually open. Anyway, here is a picture of the Legion as you may remember seeing it over the years. In fact, it's a little better than it was because we've already cleaned it up a little in that picture. Here is the architect's rendering of the Legion as it's going to be. And as you see, it's quite different. We are not going to ask to have all the buildings around it leveled as it makes it look in that building, in that picture. But it does look quite fine. And there is the building from the back. And as you see, we have a large picture window there and a deck. And this is facing one of the most beautiful scenes in Canada, the Blomidon and the Minas Basin. So we think that this is going to be a very exciting place to be shortly. This is where we were in November 22. This is the building going up. We had to get rid of the whole roof, which had been charred in a fire since the 70s and been allowed to stand. I'm not sure quite how, but it was. Anyway, we've changed it. We've extended both the front and back of the building. So although the footprint of the building is much the same, with only the addition of a 6-foot area at the back to put in a mechanical room, apart from that, it's the same. But because the front and back were only 1 floor and they're now 2, the whole building looks a lot bigger. That's further along in December, and you see the picture window more clearly there. It's not going to be quite as many glass panes as it looks like in that window, but almost as much. And there is the last one, took just a few days ago, and you see the beginning of the deck going up there, and the mechanical room through that door. And then on the left, there's another door starting a ramp going down into the lower level bar. This is the front, and as you see, we've added that whole section in the front. The front of is going to be a library and counseling room. So those 2 windows will be part of that room. And we've been donated a 500 book collection belonging to Roger Prentice of military books, which he had, surprisingly. And I think it's going to be a great foundation for the library. And we want that to be part of the service of the new Legion for veterans and others. This is getting a bit later on, and we've, as you see, we've clad the whole west side of the building. And this gives you a cross-section of the building, according to the architect. You can see the top floor has a major room overlooking the picture window. And then the main floor is much the same as it was before, except that we'll have a beautiful new kitchen. And then the basement will be a big bar and room for darts and some other activities. This is the view from when we first started building, looking out onto Cape Blomidon. It's just such a beautiful building, beautiful view, and we're very excited about being able to. It's a view that so much of Wolfville has its back to, so it's quite interesting to be able to enjoy it here. Here is a bit further along when we've got the picture frame in, and this is where it was on January the 7th, still with the glass not in the panes, but you begin to see whether it's going to be quite a substantial room. So that's it. And this is the artist's impression. That's from the architect of what it's going to look like when the picture frame window is complete, overlooking Blomidon. So let's leave it there, can we?
Actually, I was just going to put it back to this here.
Oh, okay. So, all right, there we are. Now Paul is going to explain a bit more about what our work is being.
Good morning. Glad to be here, actually. So our renovations in 2018, the plan was to perhaps build up at the top of Highland Avenue, and but that was deemed not feasible at the end of the day for us. And so we sold that land for $150,000 towards the renovation that we're into now. In 2018, 2019, we decided we were going to do about a $300,000 renovation to the building. But in the end, once we lifted the building up, there was so many deficiencies and so many structural issues, et cetera, that we got Harvey Architecture, who's doing everything pro bono for us, a company out of Halifax. They brought a design team of 6 engineer companies in with them. Everything's pro bono, and to develop what you're seeing now up on the screen. And this went from a $300,000 renovation to a $1.6 million renovation. That was in 2019. Then COVID hit, and in 2020, and we moved out of the building because the building was lifted at that point, and we could no longer be in there, and COVID had hit us at that time. So we moved to the White Rock Hall, where we do monthly or weekly coffees rather, and have been very successful bringing up our membership, et cetera, through that as well. The renovation, though, because of COVID, all the costs went up, and we're at $2.2 million is where we sit now. Throughout this whole renovation, we've been receiving a lot of, besides pro bono assistance, but a lot of material. For instance, things such as the elevator shaft, which we're installing an elevator in here. The elevator shaft was donated by VJ Rice. All the roofing shingles was donated by a company out of Halifax. All the glass at the back end of the building that you're seeing there is donated by SoSure Glass, for instance. And there's many companies doing these kind of things for us. All the flooring on the main level, porcelain tile, that's all being donated. However, there's still, out of that 2.2 million, there's still a significant cost for us as well. We're hoping to have this project completed and us in the door by the end of June this year. So, but it could be earlier. Possibility it could be later, but we're really thinking we're right on target now. The contractor, Access Contracting, they've got 3 and 4 different subcontractors in there now working steadily to get us where we are. Things that will be into the building will be 6 wheelchair accessible washrooms, 2 on each level. There'll be a ramp at the front and a ramp at the back for wheelchair coming through. Also powered doors on either end. And the front and the back doors, powered doors are being donated and also being installed again by SoSure Glass. So a lot of companies are really working hard with us. We're also going to have accessible dartboards because we want to have the handicap being able to come in, use our facilities, and so they will be on a slide of some sort, for instance. And even one of our bars, the main bar in the basement, will be wheelchair accessible, as well as our office used to have a step up. Now we're going to have a ramp into the office space as well. We're really trying to make sure that this place is fully accessible. And we're also eventually going to be installing blind signs in there as well, I say blind signs, but yeah, Braille, sorry, signs for us as well. So, but again, we're really trying hard to, this is not just going to be a building for the Legion members, the veterans, the associate members, et cetera, but it's for the community. And we really want to stress that because people are allowed to use a Legion without being a member so many times a year. And then after they've been there 3 or 4 times, if they want to continue to use it, they become members. If not, they have to be signed in by other members. The other thing is the hall rentals, spaces, et cetera, are open to everybody. And so the space upstairs, for instance, that you're seeing, that deck will hold 60 people. The upstairs room, cathedral ceilings, et cetera, will probably hold about 90 at tables, 120 at just seating arrangement type thing. So there'll be small weddings, et cetera, but whatever people want to rent it. And we've been asked by so many people so far, are we ready to rent out yet? And we obviously declined that. As Michael had said about our membership, we were 62 in 2018. We've lost over 20 of those members due to death over the last 5 years. The Legion was very old membership at that time, so we were down under 40. I became a membership chair at that time and just joining the Legion. And I'm a 35-year veteran, so this means a lot to me. But at the same time, it also means community has always meant a lot to me. So we've really have a great team working with this. We had 7 members on the executive when I joined. We now have 16 members on our executive, all with good strengths, various strengths to assist us as we're going along this. We have grown. At that time, we had 12 veterans. We only have 5 remaining veterans left. And out of that, we now have over 40 veterans, for instance. And when we open the doors, we know that there's another 24 veterans or more just in this local area that want to join, that come to us, but also the amount of membership, the civilian community ship have also said, look, you open those doors, we're coming. And we've had lots of meetings with different groups around here as well, trying to groups of people that will really want, can't wait for this to open up. The things that we're going to be offering in there for community as well, but we're going to be doing all kinds of training programs for the veterans and their families. But at the same time, they're going to be, a lot of that will be open to the community. And most of those kind of trainings will be free of charge, actually. And we're looking at doing things where we focus on seniors, for instance, fraud and theft, that kind of stuff, that scams that they get on. We have RCMP members that are veterans as well, and they're willing to teach some courses to the community, as well as we can go to the local RCMP and do the same thing. But we have fitness classes that we're going to look at as well for different, like senior age groupings, different dancing like Latino and ballroom dancing, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many exciting opportunities that are coming into our place once we open the doors. In the past, we had 1 floor open, which was the main level. The rest of the building was, for lack of better, it was deplorable. And now we'll have all 3 levels going. They can all go at the same time. There'll be soundproofing between each floors, et cetera. There's so much. It's so exciting. Our financial side of the house. So to date, we've raised over $500,000 in grant money. And at the end of the day, we have $150,000 or $160,000 in grants submitted in November. We also have another approximately $300,000 in grants coming up that we're writing for in the January, February, March timeframe. These grants, we've received grants from the federal government to date, $260,000. The province, we've received $100,000. County of Kings, we've received $78,000. The town of Wolfville, we received $10,000. And we're also, some of the grants that we're submitting that we've just submitted, federally 125, provincially 20K, and also Mud Creek Rotary 5,000. And we did ask Mud Creek for a substantial amount more, but unfortunately for us, not unfortunately for the other groups, they've committed to large sums of money to them. So we've just put in for a community grant, which is a $5,000 one, which we should hear back from sooner than later. We've also our community centric. Our target group for the most part is a 50+ age group, I guess, for most of the people that utilize us. However, we did have a couple focus groups with Acadia University students in the past, and we'll do it again because we want to be able to tap into them as far as using our space maybe for board games or maybe a study area, something like that. And also to note, one thing we didn't mention, we got rid of all our gambling out of there. We took away all the VLTs, video lottery machines. We're one of the only legions in Nova Scotia that do not have those. And the reason why is because gambling is such a huge issue amongst community, but also with anybody with PTSD, and many veterans have PTSD, I included, but not just military had PTSD. People in this audience could have PTSD, et cetera. And so we wanted to really make this place a warm, welcoming place to be, where you don't have to worry about the gambling. And we also, just for one other thing on the gambling and alcohol side, for instance, we've also included in our menus now, for instance, so many non-alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic wines and beers, et cetera. And those were big sellers for us just as we were closing up, for instance. And we look forward to doing much more of that as well. that is basically what I have to say. Michael, do you have anything that I may have missed? And just press those here.
Yes, I first, you will notice that the town of Wolfville gave us $10,000. This was 3 years ago, and we asked for 10,000 on the advice of a member of council at that time. And we feel that the town could possibly invest a little more on what is going to be really a grand benefit for the community as a whole. And I don't know whether you can see a way for us to make further application. I know that normally when you give to an organization like this, you have to wait 8 years before you get anything more. So we're hoping that we might be able to persuade you, dear people, to give us a little more help as we go towards our target. What you didn't talk about much was that we started a fundraising campaign on October the 5th at Troy Restaurant to raise $975,000. That basically is what remains after all the grants that Paul has described to you. We have started making approaches to major corporations, banks, etc. And we are hoping that some of that is going to bear fruit. We are very lucky to have Mr. Scott Bryson, who's now high up in the Bank of Montreal, and he was able to put together a very nice Zoom call with the head of Atlantic BMO in the Atlantic provinces, and also the head of the Nova Scotia BMO. So we're hoping that that will lead somewhere. We also had a very good Zoom call with Mr. Peter MacKay, the Honorable Peter MacKay. So we're hedging our bets politically, obviously. But Peter is very, very well connected, as you know, countrywide. He was Minister of National Defense. He was Minister of Justice. He was brought up in Wolfville, went to Horton High School, went to Acadia, then moved on to Carleton University. His mother, some of us here knew well. She was a great activist and member of the community. So Peter was very, very excited about this whole project, and he's promised to do everything he can to help us get to our target. So we are on the way, but we have a way to go, and there's always something else that we haven't thought of. But that's where we are. And the other possible things that we've talked about, if we can't get a direct grant, or even if we can get a direct further grant from the town, we would be very interested in you possibly covering the cost of a walkway. As you know, on the west side of the building, there is a driveway, has been a driveway coming up from the back. That's going to be a walkway because we have an emergency exit there. We can't have a driveway as well. And so that will be a paved walkway, which will give access to the general public to go to the public parking behind us without having to go right way around past the fictional apartment building, which we still haven't seen anything of, but we hope will come. So that's one thing that we would like help with. I think also that I've had a nice talk with Barb, and I think that publicity, any way in which the town can help us get the message out would be great, including the possibility of including a flyer in one of your mail outs to community members. Things like that would help us a great deal. We are really, we've got a lot of people working for nothing for years, and we would like to engage the community as much as possible in what we're doing now. And we really want to help make it easy for people to make donations to the organization, to the building.
I'm going to ask you gentlemen, if you could wrap it up. We have a full council meeting. Paul, were there some final points that you wanted to make?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, very quickly. So we've got many prospective major donors that we're meeting with in the January, February timeframe here to go help us towards our final fundraising. Looks very good, by the way. But also, and we've written 22 grants so far. By the time we finish, it'll be up to 30 grants federally down to the town of Wolfville. So, and everything in between. The other side is the town parking lot. I was talking with Mr. Thomason with regards to tearing the fence between our property and the town property, tearing that down, because in the back of the Legion, half of that land belongs to the town. And we're aware of that. And so tearing that fence down, we're looking at an April, May timeline to have that be ready. So the town come in, we'll remove everything out of the back, and the parking lot can all be made up as one, which will be fantastic, actually. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Council, if you have a few minutes, if anybody has questions of Paul or Michael. Councillor Butler.
Can your presentation be sent to us?
Sure can.
And can, instead of asking questions about a better financial breakdown, because I wrote down like 30 numbers, can a bit of a breakdown be sent to us as well, just in terms of where things have come from, what you've applied for, that kind of stuff?
Sure can.
Yeah, I heard a bunch of numbers, but then a lot of stuff was donated, so I wasn't sure if the total included the donated bits or if it was above and beyond that. So just something a little more comprehensive for us.
Right. And out of the 2.2 million, so far we've had about 300,000 or so of monies that have been donated, reference supplies rather, of material. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's an exciting project for the town, and I know that you have your group has worked extremely hard on this, and we wish you all the best. We are in our annual budget process now, and if any formal asks, as Mr. Botry said, we do have a policy that says once in 7 years for that ask, but certainly I see no reason why the council can't discuss things, and some of the alternatives that you have suggested might be possibilities. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to public input. Is there anyone from the gallery? And thank you, Noel. And are there any people online? No. Okay. So Noel McQueen, if you'd like to come up, just state your name and where you live. And you have 3 minutes.
I need better glasses so I can actually see what I'm doing. Thanks. Hi, Noel McQueen, 2 Fairfield Street. I'd like to address the agenda item of Acadia asking the town to provide funding to maintain pool programming for the public at the Acadia Athletic Center. On behalf of all Wolfville residents who use the pool on a regular basis for fitness, physiotherapy, accident or illness recovery, mental health and socialization, I'm asking the council to support Acadia's request with a caveat. For the past year or two, the public swim programming at Acadia has been inconsistent at best, inconvenient at worst. The programming available has been inconsistent from week to week, and the swims have been spontaneously canceled with little to no notice. The excuse offered for these inadequacies has most often been staffing availability. Acadia has failed in its MOU responsibilities to ensure that its facilities remain open and available to the residents of the town on substantially the same basis as those facilities are available to members of the Acadia community. Given that the MOU is due for renegotiation this year, and the administration at Acadia Athletic Center have indicated that funding has been approved to hire a new aquatic director, may I suggest that council present Acadia with the idea that the town provide funding to hire an aquatic director and manage the Acadia pool under the supervision of the town, and that this condition should be part of the renegotiated MOU. If the town becomes the pool manager, and there is historical precedence for this suggestion, then the town can with greater confidence be assured of supporting an investment in improving the quality of life for all Wolfville citizens. There are a number of people who use that pool every day who need that facility in this community, myself being one of them. I could name people, but I do not have their permission to, so I won't right here, right now. I could name people who moved to Wolfville because recreation facilities like the pool, actually especially and specifically the pool, exist in this community. If that pool does not exist in this community, it is going to significantly negatively impact the life of a number of Wolfville residents who need that pool on a regular basis to maintain their personal health and fitness. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. I wonder if you could leave or send us a copy of your notes. I think that
Oh,
would be
I
helpful.
recognize that this was going to be a long meeting, so I also have a whole bunch of notes about the discussion for the recreation center as well. I don't know.
Okay,
you
well,
want
if
me
you
to
can
say that
send,
now,
no, I was going to say, if you
I can
can
do that
send
as
us that as we are discussing the give to the pool, that information would be helpful for us. Thank you.
I would be very happy to have a much larger discussion about that.
And
with
I would
anybody on
note, we are
council
not
who's
renegotiating the MOU. We are reviewing the
Reviewing
MOU.
the
So
MOU.
there's a slight difference there. But
Fair.
thank you.
Anyways, okay, but anybody who would like to have a much larger discussion, I can give you a great deal more information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Nobody else for public input, nobody online, just checking one more time. Okay. Nobody's online. All right, that moves us to committee reports, internal. I think the first two, we have a verbal report for our CMP Planning Committee. Yes, you have a verbal report. Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor, Chair Voss.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. It's a very short report. We had a very short meeting. I think it lasted 20 minutes. And so the main agenda item was really just, we had no new business and no one raised anything during the roundtable, which I think was one of the reasons it was.
Are we talking planning advisory?
Oh, sorry.
Because that was a 2-hour meeting. Do we?
I thought the verbal report was already RCMP.
It is, but I'm asking about planning advisory. Do we have a planning advisory
Oh.
report?
It's in
in there,
It's
okay.
in there.
All right. Any additional informations or any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. When you said verbal report, I
Yes,
just jumped into my verbal.
Yes, sorry. And that, so any questions from members of council on planning advisory?
I would say we had a wonderful meeting. That was the one thing. It's very, very exciting. The new committee. It's just, yeah, it's very, very good.
It's an excellent committee.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now. our
Now,
CMP
sorry.
advisory verbal report.
That was the short meeting,
Yes.
which lasted about 20 minutes. And I think one of the reasons was that the previous meeting had been delayed by about 2 months. So we really didn't have a lot of new ground to cover during this meeting on December the 13th. And so we focused really exclusively on the RCMP quarterly report. We had no new business or no one added anything to the roundtable. So I think that was why. And the focus of the quarterly report really was on some of the resources that were identified, some safety tips for closing up things like the cottages for the winter, and the RCMP, the district participation in community events. So it was a very interesting meeting, but a very, very short meeting. So hopefully our next meeting will be on April the 11th. So the report that was covered during this period was from September to November. The RCMP quarterly report, and a lot of that had been covered in the previous meeting in October. So, okay, thank you.
Can I ask, and I should know this, but do we publicize, and by publicize, I mean put on the website, the RCMP quarterly report?
Yes, it's part of the agenda.
It's on the
It's part of
agenda.
the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody had asked me that question, and I actually was thinking back a number of years ago, and some of that wasn't public, and so I was just
It is.
updating myself. It's part of the agenda.
It's part of the agenda. Yeah.
Because sometimes it was just walked in. I guess that's where it wasn't always on there. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Policing Services Review Committee. I'll pass that over to the CAO.
So I had been thinking, maybe optimistically, that I would have been in a position to actually walk council through a little bit of a discussion on where the review committee has landed over the last couple of meetings with respect to defining expectations heading into development of the RFP. We had 2 excellent meetings in December, one on the 9th and one on the 20th, to workshop through various categories related to policing and what the expectation from the lens of the review committee would be with respect to each of those. And then the path forward is to take that information and then start to look at what an RFP will entail. But I had a really good meeting with Dr. Stephen Schneider last week to kind of review what the committee has done. And we've been back and forth a little bit at the committee level around the process to move forward. And he's got some ideas that he wants to chat with the review committee on in terms of approach. So I felt like that's probably appropriate to do that and then come back to council and bundle it together and let you know where we're at. The biggest decision point moving forward is really to determine how we're going to consider what our own town force would look like. So there'd been some discussion on, do we go out to an RFP and then the town could maybe be a respondent to that process to look at, what our own force would look like. Then there was some discussion at the committee that maybe we actually start from that place, develop what our model would look like, and then use that as a benchmark for the RFP for others to respond. And then Stephen had a couple other ideas and I think they're worth exploring. So we are going to have a meeting on January 30th with the review committee and he's going to join. And just for context, he is affiliated. He's a professor at St. Mary's in the Department of Criminology. Acadia does not have a similar department. And so there's some opportunities to partner with that institution to help us move forward on that work. Plus he's a resident of Wolfville and has a lot of expertise and interest in that area. So having him sort of be there to help inform the committee and provide some value as we go forward, I think is really beneficial. So all that to say, it was too premature to bring it today in any kind of sort of workshop-y way. But after the 30th, I think we'll be in a really good position to come back and give a pretty good overview to council of where we're at.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the CAO? More to come. Town and Gown Committee, I have nothing to add except to say we aren't renegotiating, we are reviewing, and as the report says, the council has done their report card on this and forwarded that to the other 2 partners. We're awaiting their report card, and we have, I think, 3 meetings set up over the next 6 weeks or so to get that review finalized. Are there any questions? All right, back to you, CAO report.
Okay, so there's quite a bit of information in the report and I won't go through it all. If anyone has any questions, let me know. I think maybe to start, I will get Barb to come up and just talk a bit about Watson and take this as an opportunity because we did get the car yesterday. I was getting pictures of its delivery and it's sitting outside in the spot next to Chambers. But Barb can enthusiastically do a better job of sharing Watson's story than I can. So we'll start with that.
Good morning through the mayor to council. Happy New Year. We were very excited to be getting an electric vehicle. That was a big deal for us. And the compliance team, of course, have the honor of using this vehicle around the community. So we wanted to do a little bit of a brand development process so that it was identifiable and then it kind of worked with the whimsical nature of everything Wolfville and working with the bloom and working with our color palette. So we got into some discussions about it with some of the compliance staff. And I took folks through just a really basic brand development process, which is we first talk about what we need, which was we needed some kind of a name and visually identifiable symbol for the vehicle. And then we started talking about, well, what do you like? How do you come up with a name for that? So of course, all of the electric kind of names we went through and some were taken and some were not appropriate. And we kept coming back to watt, kind of electricity in watts. And then we're like, well, how do we fit that into compliance for heaven's sakes? So then we got into the idea of Watson, Dr. Watson, who of course assisted, in case people are not aware, who assisted CAO. So the intrepid Dr. Watson, who of course assisted Sherlock Holmes while getting to the bottom of anything that needed to be getting to the bottom of. So with that in mind, we kind of started playing around with the idea of Watson. So of course we changed the spelling to be W-A-T-T-S and then the apostrophe N. And then we wanted to again have some kind of a visual piece with it. So we went with the start button icon, which is flipped upside down, but from inside the car, it sure as heck looks like a magnifying glass. So all of those pieces came together, and we're happy that we didn't pay an agency thousands of dollars to come up with that, because we did it in-house. And so once compliance staff had worked on that with me, and kind of we felt pretty good about it, it went through management. I walked it through with Trevor the other day out in the parking lot as well. And we're really happy to see Watson up and running. And that is the story of Watson. And we are going to be sharing that story in our newsletter, on the website, and through social media. And we hope that people will welcome Watson and see Watson as a valuable member of our compliance team.
Thank you. Questions?
No, it's great.
Excited. Do we get Sherlock Holmes hats?
You can have whatever you would like. I feel we
The
should
next
maybe do
town
some
of
swag
Wolfville
with
hats,
Watson.
We should have deer stalker style things,
Our compliance team are getting new uniforms, I'm hearing.
which could create all sorts of other problems, but you know, for deer lovers, but. Go ahead. Thank you, Barb.
So just a couple of things to follow up from some discussions that council had in November and December. So the crosswalk flag pilot program is up and live. We're getting a lot of feedback, and we're tracking usage, and there's a community survey that's available for folks to fill out, but by and large, the feedback has been positive. So we will keep council posted on the results of that. And with respect to the EDI discussion that we had in December, and I don't have this in the CAO report because it was hot off the press, we have identified an individual to work with us for the next couple of months on the EDI program. Her name is Tanvi Dabas. She's a fourth year psychology student at Acadia that will be graduating. She's come back just to finish her last term, and she only has one special project course to do. So she's got some availability to work with us. But she herself is an international student that was new to Wolfville, that's had some really interesting and varied lived experiences in our town over the last 4 years, very well connected to various groups that I think would be really important to help inform our EDI work, and is really excited to join our team through till the end of March to work with us. So council's direction had been to find, the right resource to kind of support our work. And I really think that Tanvi will be an excellent addition. So she's just in Toronto now. She'll be back next week, and then she'll hit the ground running with our team. So I just wanted to let you know that that was moving forward. Yes, she was. She was on the student council, and then she's also involved with the International Students Association as well, among other things. So, yeah. So that's the update on that. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything specific that anyone has any questions for with respect to the CAO report. Really, all hands are on deck, and we're turning our attention to the budget right now. So we do have our special budget meeting coming up later this month, and that's taken up a lot of time of the management team. So looking forward to that discussion, as well as the parks planning process that will get underway later this week with council at the official kickoff. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the CAO? Councillor Palmetier.
The flags you put up, how many have disappeared? Or how many are still there?
Yeah, that I have to look to see if we've got any results yet from our early.
Yeah, we don't know if any disputed had any reports of that.
None of them.
I've been using them, but I see that they're still full and lots of the.
Councillor Ingham.
Yes, thanks, Erin, for the report. I just wanted to thank you for mentioning the Memory Cafe and the award that they're up for, the Grassroots Award. I did talk to Beverly Cassidy, and she was pretty excited about actually being honored for that. So I look forward to the results of that, being this is January's Alzheimer's Awareness Month for Canada. So thanks for mentioning that.
Are there other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for your report, CAO. Now we move on to our staff reports for discussion, and the first one is the appointment of Councillor Palmetier to committees. We have, I'm going to pass this over to the CAO, but those of you who whose existing committee appointments were affected, I have reached out to, I think it was 2 of you, so that you had a heads up on this. And Erin, I'm going to just pass the rest over to you.
So I think this should conclude what's been a couple months worth of discussion to populate our committees and bring some stability. And we welcome our new counselor to our committees. So you have the report in front of you, and the recommendations is that Councillor Palmer join the audit committee, and that would be in place of Isabel Madera Voss, who was put on that committee back in December. That Councillor Palmer would join the Source Water Protection Committee, and that would take the place of Councillor Ingham, who was put on in December. And then we would slot the representation in as the alternate for the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, as the alternate for the Wolfville Business Development Corporation, and then taking the mayor's place on the Valley Community Fiber Network. So if the motion is passed, that list would be updated, and those would be the committee appointments that would take effect. And then we would revisit all of them again in November, recognizing some of them are for a 2-year term. So there's only some committees that would turn over next November.
The only thing most of our committees, I think all but one, well, actually, I'm not sure that the marsh bodies have alternates, Wendy. We've always had an alternate on VCFN, and I know when Mayor Cantwell was the rep, I was the alternate. I'm wondering if, and I can stay on as alternate. It has only met twice a year, but just in case. Is that something we can just do here?
Yeah,
No?
we can approve with that addition if that's something that council wishes to add.
Councillor Ingham?
So, yeah, so that's not the only, so we're going to talk about alternates in general, because that's not the only alternate committee that doesn't have alternates presently.
So I would say not as part of this RFD necessarily, but there is that request for agenda item that the mayor has added. So that would be a good point for that discussion. I will note that typically our own internal committees of councils haven't had alternates. So that's something that we, definitely should take some direction from council on. In terms of the external committees,
We have 2.
yeah,
I think
there's
that-
I
think
traditional.
where we have 2 people, it's not as,
Yeah,
and
but you
most
were-
of our councils, so you and I are both on accessibility, so
Where last time Jody was alternate.
we had an alternate on accessibility.
Yeah, there's no.
Okay,
So right now, there has been no alternates appointed, I don't believe, except for maybe that accessibility. I have to go back and check to see what we did in November for internal committees. With respect to the external committees, we do have alternates noted for most of them. The Diversity Kings one, we don't at this point, and that was primarily waiting to see what's happening with that committee, because Kings County is supposed to meet and have that discussion. And if we still have representation long-term on that, that may be one that we would like to see an alternate for. And the other 2 that don't currently have alternates that are external are the Marsh Body, and they don't meet very frequently. So I don't know if there's a need or not, but that's certainly something that we can discuss. But in terms of our internal committees, that would be appropriate.
okay, well, maybe we can punt that discussion of alternates to the RFA that I have, and if an emergency meeting of any of the committees comes up before we have that discussion, and it's felt that somebody from the town should be there, please just contact me and we'll figure it out. I'm sure we can do that. Yes, please. if you would.
Okay, I would move that council approve the changes made to committee appointments as outlined in RFD 001-2023 with the noted addition. Because I think you're adding.
Actually, we're not going to do that now. We'll just
Okay.
bump everything to the RFA discussion. So
So
forget the
forget the
noted
note,
addition.
forget the noted addition.
Thank you. And Councillor Elliott will second it. Are there any more comments or discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So that's passed. Welcome to committees, Councillor Palmetier. And that brings us to the Acadia Pool Operations Financial Request, and I think that's Karen, that would be
Yeah,
you.
and I'll get Mike to come
Mike.
up and we'll tag team this one a little bit. So back in February of 2022, Brian Finnis, who's the athletics director with Acadia, came and made a request in front of council for some financial support for the pool. That was punted to the budget process. There was a discussion at that time that we sort of reserved 72,000 from our reserves so that council could have the option later on in the year, should they choose to provide a grant to Acadia, but that more information was required before that decision could be finalized. So we've gone back and forth with Acadia a little bit since then. And in November, I got some correspondence from Chris, which has been represented in this RFD, that tried to provide a little bit more information in terms of usage and in terms of the operating budget for the pool. That's the information that I think we are going to get. I'm not sure that there's much more that will be provided by Acadia. So Mike and I made the decision that it's probably timely to bring the RFD forward, recognizing that council may have some questions that we just don't have answers to, whether we don't have that information or whether the data doesn't exist. But this is what we have from Acadia at this point. You'll note that similar to other larger requests, we don't have a recommendations from staff with a dollar value that can be populated by council. You can choose not to provide a grant at all. You can choose to provide the grant at the amount requested, or you can choose to provide any grant amount that you so choose. That's all within your purview. There's some information in the RFD to help support the discussion. I should note that I did have a conversation with my counterpart in Kings, and their council has not yet entertained any formal discussion on this. What he did confirm was that there wasn't a formal submission made by Acadia through their grants program to date, and that's kind of where that's been. But I think that there's some interest from Acadia to have those conversations with the county. They just haven't happened yet, and not really my area to comment on, but I knew that question would likely come up as to whether Kings County has discussed this or made any decisions related to a financial contribution, since they were also, like us, one of the two municipalities that did provide a contribution last fiscal year. So there's some information that has been provided. This is, we've treated Acadia's pool discussions typically off policy. It doesn't fit neatly into our one-time grant applications. So we just note that that's how the 21-22 grant was approved. It would be preferable as we move into our MOU discussions to have a little bit of clarity on go forward, what this will look like, at least in the medium term, while we look at options for the regional facility and how that may or may not move forward. Just because to come back every year, it is problematic. It would be good to have a bit of certainty as to how council wants us to address that contribution to the pool. When you look at the numbers that are provided, the annual net cost for the university to operate the pool ranges from a low of $200,000 to about $250,000, and they seem to be fairly consistent in that amount. They don't change too much year to year. Obviously, there's data to support that Wolfville and the general area use the pool. That was supported in the Sierra report that we did back in 2019, and it's reflected in the information that we're getting from Acadia. I think where we have a little bit of a difference in opinion is how you interpret what's available for community versus what's available for Acadia. So Acadia has said that their usage of the pool is approximately 10% and that community usage is approximately 90%. So I think there's different ways that you can look at that. We've provided a bit of information just looking at a schedule back in November when we got that information from Mr. Callback that would bring probably a little bit of a different result. Nonetheless, there is pool time available for our community. There's pool time available for Acadia, and sometimes those things come together and Acadia students or faculty can come to a public swim, for example. And so it's maybe not as cut and dry as 90% community, 10% Acadia. When you look at the general public use and going back to the Sierra report, 51% was from Wolfville, 28% was from Kings County, and 13% was Kentville. And the rest were from other areas with our smaller amounts. That doesn't include the drop-in or pay-as-you-go. That's just based on memberships. And I just maybe turn it over to Mike to see if you want to add anything from a financial perspective.
I think you've covered most of the points. I guess to reiterate what's in the report is in fiscal 21-22, previous year, The grant was just a little under $72,000 between the summer and the winter contribution. At that time, council considered not only the request, but there were COVID safe restart monies that were available throughout municipalities, and I think the university as well. So that's a difference now, though those dollars are gone. So there are no dollars in that respect that can help supplement whatever council decides. This year's budget did include an allowance for $72,000, but it was to come from operating reserves because it isn't in the MOU yet. There was no decision as to, is this an annual amount? I think the CAO has touched on that. So at this stage, lacking the data, it's hard to put a number on it because there is the difference that was just mentioned about how much is Acadia use, how much is the general community. And I think some of that comes down to not just the number of people going in to use the pool, but the times of day. You know, if there's certain times that are blocked off for varsity swimming, clearly there's no community use, but community use could be students as well at times. So lacking that, and I guess the final piece would be, and I think I alluded to it in the report, too early to give a full update. It'll go to audit committee on the 27th. We're doing our December 31st third quarter analysis and year-end forecast. Right now, it looks like we're facing a small deficit, pending decisions of the audit committee forward to committee of the whole in February, I would expect, to offset that. So the op reserves are there if council wants to use it. We are facing a likely small deficit pending decisions, and there's a lack of data. So I'm not sure that the full 72,000 would be warranted. And I don't mean to be harsh on Acadia, but lacking data, do you just match the previous year? I'm not sure that's not a way for us to make a decision or for council to facilitate that. So I leave it to, the difficult thing is to wrestle with, if not 72 and if not 0, where does the number fit? And I can provide some comment on that if you wish, but I think I'll turn it back to council to just kind of discuss the merits.
Thank you, Director McLean, and thank you, CAO. I'm going to open this up for questions or comments before we do get a motion on the floor, because we don't actually have one now. Members of council, Councillor Butler.
I just have one question in terms of the section of the report that talks about the annual amount through the MOU, 35,000 general contribution to the athletics complex. We do not get a breakdown of where that goes within the athletics complex. Okay, that was my question.
Councillor Elliott.
Back in 2016, when I first joined council, we went on a tour of the athletics complex. And I remember clearly being told that the pool was in really bad shape. I'm sure it's not any better, but I'm not sure if Acadia is involved in the discussions around what might happen for a recreation complex down the road. Were they involved at all?
There has been an engagement with Acadia and Sierra.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. Okay.
Because I think we provided some information to council at the last in camera.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though that this is up to 72,000 this year, but it could be that amount for as many years as we can project because there isn't an alternative.
True.
Okay, thanks.
I saw Councillor Ingham.
Yes, I'm not comfortable with the $72,000 just flat ask. Where does that, where is that specific amount coming from? Is it something they just used from the previous year because that was our COVID relief money? It's like, okay, we gave that for COVID relief. The town was locked out of the pool for a whole year, anxious to get it back. It's a valuable resource. I totally agree. I think it has to be, the terms have to be written up in an MOU. We already give the $71,000. And I too, with the data saying, this is how much Wolfville uses the pool. I'm not so sure it's exactly accurate. And also, the public pays to get in there. So it's not like, people aren't paying a membership to go into the pool. to support it, right? So the $72,000, I'm just not comfortable with unless we have more information, you know, moving forward to where we're going to put it in the budget. So just, you know.
Councillor Palmetier.
So that's 72, well, last year, 72 plus 35?
Plus, yeah, there's,
Whatever that number was, 35.
Yeah, so the 35 is an amount that's specified in the memorandum of understanding we have with Acadia that just goes towards the athletic complex on the whole. And so it's meant to just help supplement some of their operating costs in general. And that's been in place since 2018.
I think as a presentation earlier, we have to be very careful. Public access, that pool is very limited, and they are limited all the time, as was commented earlier, due to staffing issues. And I think it's an organizational issue. It's pretty simple.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with 72, just as a flat ask. I'm disappointed that, again, we've asked for information and not gotten it. I think we all try to make an informed decision. So without that information, it's really hard to do. I'm disappointed to hear that that Acadia hasn't gone to the county as well. I think that would be prudent on their part if they were in dire need, that they would be asking everyone, no different than the Legion wrote 30 or 300, however many grants they had to write to get their space. I feel like they should be doing the same amount of work. So I don't know what number we could come to. I know that it is a valuable resource to the community. So I'd hate to see us locked out of it or whatever term we want to use for that, but I'm struggling with the amount. And I think I say this every time someone asks us for money. In return for the money given, can we have something in writing to say we want X? Similar to what we did with Landmark East. If we're going to give $72,000, there has to be an expectation for what we're giving. If we use 90%, then let's make sure we get 90%. If it's 50%, whatever it is, but let's make sure. And if they're canceling times, that they are made up again and that they are held to that. And also ask, as they continue on asking for this amount of money, if we're going to be continuing to fund it, that they collect and give us the stats that we ask for.
100% agree. I having done these things for a living, it just boggles my mind. I'm sure Councillor Ingham could stand on that pool deck with a counter and figure out in a week how many hours are open, and I go with you, how many are community people, how many are students who are using community time. It is not brain surgery, and it just totally boggles my mind that it's not possible to know how many hours it's open and for what activity. I have heard working with universities before that they'll say, well, it's mostly community use, and that's because you have 15 varsity swimmers in the pool for a couple of hours, but in those same couple of hours, you might have 50 people for public swim. So do you measure the number of people or the number of hours? These are all things we could do standing on the pool deck. That the fact that we can't get that information, I don't understand. It's such a simple thing to do. I agree with Councillor McKay. I think that I'm surprised that the ask hasn't gone out to the county. The county has a very robust policy of providing support for their residents to play in Berwick or to be in programs in Wolfville. It's been in place for years and years. I think that maybe that should be looked at. I do know that for some reason that I don't understand, Acadia has not participated in the past, but I don't understand why they couldn't. I did a calculation. If in fact we are 40% of the usage of 48% of that amount brings me to about $61,000. So that was the top that I was prepared to go with. I would be in support of providing funding to Acadia on the understanding that we do have an MOU, not part of the MOU that is town and gown, but similar to what we developed with Landmark East and other organizations going forward. I would be in support of that. The other reason am in support of that, if such time as we do have a regional recreation center, my guess is that 71 or $61,000 is going to be a small amount. But we could also write into our understanding that if at such time that we have something else, at least we have that amount in the budget, and it allows us to start to prepare for what we are going to pay in the probably mid to long-term future. So we don't have a motion. I do agree with everything everybody said, and I would certainly be comfortable with a motion that gave an amount of money, but with those strings attached, and that we develop an MOU that allows us to confirm the actual number of town of Wolfville residents, other residents, hours that they are used. And I am concerned about the comment we heard, or it concerns me to have heard the comment that we heard from the public this morning that events are canceled without a lot of notice. And I am assuming if those are membership based, what compensation is given for that? Is the membership, you know, if you lose 2 weeks, does your membership get extended for 2 weeks, or is it just cut off and you start again? Those are simple things. Anyways, those are my comments. I don't know if anybody, Councillor Ingham, go ahead. And at some point, I guess we need to have a motion.
Yeah, so I understand where you got the $61,000 from, but even those numbers are pre-COVID, as we're saying. So things drastically changed after COVID.
Understand.
So the pool time, staffing, all of that stuff, the service that have been offered to the public have decreased. So are those numbers really relative? So I want to support the pool for the community because it's a valuable asset to everybody. It's the number that I'm having an issue coming up with, and where are you going to come up with? So we as a council have to go on concrete facts. And I don't feel like there's something concrete here for me to say here's $72,000.
Councillor Butler.
Coming up with a number is hard for me as well. I'm trying not to think of it as, well, it could be this, or this, or this. If they have a full operating cost of the pool and we're only giving a portion, where is the rest of it coming from? They obviously have that. Personally, after reading the report and just the years, like the pool's been open since 1968, and the fact that you can't present any updated data in 2022 when everything is so easy to present data and it's just pretty much a handout. I have family that want to use that pool every single day, and I hear about it every Sunday at supper that it is not available. It can't be used for this. My membership was not extended after COVID. I was not given a refund for my parking pass. I had to buy a new one during COVID. Constant complaints from the community. I am happy with them using the 35,000 for the pool, and that is it. From the 35,000 general contribution, it could be specified it is for the pool.
Can I ask the CEO, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I am asking for an opinion, which you might not have, but I recall just as we were coming out of COVID and there was the discussion that the pool, and I think, Councillor Ingham, am I right, was the pool drained at one point?
Oh, it's usually drains once a
For, but yeah, but I mean, during COVID, it was empty. That I remember hearing the statement from the university that if we didn't pay, that they would not put water back in the pool. Do you have any, so I did hear that. Do you have any sense that if the town is not supportive, that would be the consequence?
So when council had this discussion back a year ago and a financial contribution was made, at that time, Acadia stated clearly, and it was a public statement, that they would remove the water for May, June, July, and August if we didn't provide a financial contribution because their students are gone, and that it would go back in September. And the amount that was determined when we had that discussion, there was an amount to support those 4 months that was really at our cost, if you recall, with the county, which included all the operational costs of the lifeguards and everything to keep the pool open those 4 months. And then we were just essentially providing a contribution to support for the remaining 8 months. This fiscal year that we're currently in, there was no talk of that. So coming into May of this current year, we were never told by the university there was a danger of having the pool close or shutter for those 4 months. Now, could that happen again? It may. So my opinion would be that it happened before where they were looking to save some dollars and saw that that could be a potential without community financial support. So I can't say that it won't happen in the future. It was not part of this fiscal year. They stayed open and they didn't.
Do you have any sense that, the reason some of you may not know, Councillor Ingham has, I don't know if you still are, but has been a swim coach there and a guard. And so she's very familiar with the pool. She's a person who has stood on that deck. Do you think they would allow anybody, such as Councillor Ingham or maybe our recreation staff, to do a count of hours open over a week or so that we get some good data, since they don't seem to be able to do it? Is that? Because I think before we make a decision, we need to know that. We need to know how often it is canceled. For example, Councillor Butler?
So I went on the website this morning because I had a complaint yesterday about the pool, knowing this was coming up. And there is an Excel spreadsheet chart that lists when the varsity are in there, this week, and I'm sure it's an off week because students are just coming back and everything, but there is 1 hour allotted this week for Aquafit and 9 hours allotted for a public swim, which is Saturdays and Sundays. Everything else is varsity or Smile. It's Acadia related, which is a lot of time. There's lane swimming, but that's you book those. So it's just one person in one lane. I guess that's no. Okay. But that would be considered, that's open to the public. Okay. So there is more public than what it looks like in the chart.
I think they consider, rightly or wrongly, I think they consider Smile public.
Okay.
Do they? No?
It's Acadia based.
Okay.
It's Acadia
All right.
based. Yeah. So it didn't look like much on the spreadsheet this morning when I looked at it.
Noel,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. I understand. So is it fair to say, council, that before we can actually deal with this, we want some facts?
Could I throw something in?
Yes, of
Just in
course.
that,
Sure.
we've been trying to, and I understand that we could send somebody in for a week to count. We're trying to determine cost sharing on an annual pool cost. And as already noted, the availability week in and week out differs. So it would really, I think we'll end up with somewhat imprecise data if we looked at a week or 2 weeks, because those 2 weeks could be different than the following
Sure.
2 weeks. My thought is, we've been trying to get precise data for a while now. In this fiscal year, there's only a couple of months left. I applaud the search for the data, but if it's not likely to come before March 31st, if council's willing to consider some dollar amount, this is very arbitrary, but $200,000 net operating loss. If we said half the pool was Acadia use, regardless of how you broke it down, varsity, Smile, whatever, and then the town share is half of that, which seems to be supported in the Sierra data, that gets you down to 50,000. And I'm not trying to whittle it down. I'm just an arbitrary way to go. There's a cost sharing. It's a little less than a cent on the tax rate. And in the longer term, that's the way we're going to have to incrementally increase the budget. It would allow to recognize the significance of the pool to the community. It allows you to spend dollars that, notwithstanding we don't have the data, council had committed to some level. And that would be kind of my arbitrary way to say, consider something like that. So the answer would be 50.
Yeah, that certainly sounds reasonable to me. Would that be 50,000 to the end of March?
It would be this fiscal year
And
contribution.
then
So
we would be
yes,
looking at another 50,000 April 1.
it's basically in April last year to March of this
Yeah.
year contribution.
Aaron?
Yeah, so that would just be for this fiscal year is what I was going to say. And to an earlier point, we could have an agreement with them that data be collected in a way that council wants to see it to help inform future discussions around where is the number for more of a medium term annual contribution. And just with the 50,000, just to add another arbitrary point to that, back in 2021, when you looked at your grants to organizations policy, the cap on the one-time capital grants was put at 50. So just again, another frame of reference that's not directly relevant, but we're just trying to find a number, so that would fit.
I'm sorry, I didn't see who went on first. Did
Councillor
Councillor Elliott?
Yeah. Question for the CAO. That $35,000 figure, in my memory, it was around Acadia providing day camps and programs other than the pool?
No, so in the agreement, so we have 35,000 that we give to support the complex, and a direct quote from the ask at the time from Acadia was to help keep the lights on, essentially, like it was for those operational costs. Then we provide $15,000 a year for them to provide day camps on our support. So we purchase that service through them. There's $11,000 that we provide in bursaries. And then there's $10,000 that we provide depending on the year for events, for major events, and to help support that. So that's the total package, but the 35 is separate.
A couple hundred. But Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I feel comfortable with the rationale behind the 50,000. I don't feel comfortable with the town taking on the role of collecting the data. I think that is something we should be asking Acadia to do, because, you know, that they should have people, students. I mean, there should be a lot of resources within Acadia to be able to collect that data effectively. And I don't think it's fair for us to take that on in addition to looking at giving them money. So, but I did want to say, I think the rationale for the 50,000 seems reasonable.
Councillor Ingham?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the data. I think that would be very difficult to do, like if for myself or a member of staff to be standing there. And the number one reason is week to week, everything changes. So Acadia Varsity just finished a training camp. They would have had the pool a lot more. So if you had gone in at that time, they have more of the time in the pool. There's swim meets, there's other events. How the pool works is Acadia gets Acadia Varsity is going to get priority on where they want to book. That's how you book. You go varsity and then you sort of mingle in between, right? So if things are going to be canceled, it's certainly probably not Acadia Varsity or the SMILE program, which has been there for a long time. I don't see how we could get accurate data myself on that.
I do think we could provide a template for accurate data, and I just can't. It is so simple to get that data. It's so simple, and I don't understand why they don't have it. They just choose not to get it, and maybe by not having the data, then you can say things like it's 10% Acadia, 90% the community. And so why gather data that would show that that's not the case? I am also comfortable with the 50,000. I mean, there's a logic there for this year, but I would not support it unless we have some very, you know, before you get this again, this is the data that we want to see, is what I would be in support of. I'm sorry, I didn't see your lights before I talked. Who would like to go first?
Mine's
Go ahead.
quick.
Go ahead, Councillor Butler.
So two things. I mean, we talk about the data. I don't see how it's not already there. Like you can't get into that facility without scanning your ID swipe. So they know who goes in and out of that building. If you look at the schedule online, they know when the varsity hours are there. You can figure out it's there. I don't know why this is so difficult in 2022 to get data that is, it should just be there. They know how many people are parked in their parking lot for hockey games. They know about like, and that's just 2 people standing at the entrances. So it should be very easy to get the data. I'm moderately comfortable with 50,000 because I am here for the public, and for the public, I will approve that amount. I think that it is very unfair of Acadia to continue to ask for a handout for something that if we don't give money to Acadia, the pool will still be there because they need it for their athletes. They need it for their program. Like they're not going to kick their athletes out. So there's this pressure on us to commit financially for the public. And I think that's taken advantage of sometimes. But for 50,000 to ease my mind in terms of how we work with the public, I think it is a good thing. I think it's a necessity for a lot of our community to use it for physiotherapy, for mental health, for social ability, all that stuff. So I'm comfortable with that amount.
Councillor McKay?
Yeah, I did a quick calculation as well last night, and I somewhere was in the comfortableness of 50 to 60. So I would be happy with that. And I think we do. I'm willing to put it in there for 2 reasons, because I think it's important to keep it as a placeholder for in the budget. I think we're going to have to spend way more than that as we go through recreation facility studies. So I think that's an important thing to keep going. I think it's important for the public to be in there for public swims and all those. And the Tritons, as they may be paying for their suites, but they are also our community members as well. They're young people in our community. So I think that's important for them as well. So I think there's lots of good users of that pool that need it. So I'm happy to do that, but only under the circumstances that our time is guaranteed and that they come back with some data next time, should we choose to approve it. I also don't think we should, if we can give them a template to do it, and if it's that simple, great. But I think giving our staff to do it just increase the cost that we're contributing to them. So I'm not interested in that, but I'm happy to put a motion on the floor with those things in place. should
If you
anyone-
would, you're so good at that.
On the fly. I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve $50,000 in support of the Acadia pool operations for the 2022-23 fiscal year, and that an MOU be created to give appropriate access to community and statistics be collected over the next year.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Ingham. Is there any further discussion?
Could I just recommend the word usage statistics, just so it's clear that that's what we're looking for as a breakdown?
And I agree, it would be, I'm just frustrated because I do know that it's so simple to catch that if, sometimes I just say, well, I'll just do it, And so what we are asking basically is for the staff, I won't say the CAO, but staff to bring back a template for an MOU to this council that would have our, basically what information we want to have gathered, and that our future grants are predicated on us being comfortable with that level of data. So that's good. And I do think you're right. Should we go ahead with with whatever a future facility is, this is going to be a small amount. I guess I think a future discussion might be, should this be, rather than reserve, should this be in the budget so that we start to prepare ourselves for what that cost is? But I'm going to leave that to Director McLean to decide that. Is there any other discussion on that motion? It has been moved by Councillor McKay. We do have a seconder, yes. Any other discussion? No, the question's been called. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, that's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKay, again for your motion work. All right, East End Secondary Plan, and I think Director Lake is going to give us an update on, yes, what was a very good meeting on the AC.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I was going to suggest that I go through some of the Planning Advisory Committee presentation, just a short bit of it for the councillors who aren't on PAC's benefit. This would be my third time running through this, so bear with me, but I will do that. Zoom. How do I use Zoom? Mike, if I just bring the presentation up, is it already sharing or? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm just going to run through this because it does provide some background. I could probably talk about this for a couple hours, so the mayor may want to rein me in here at some point. But I'll go through just the front end of this quickly, and then I assume there's a number of questions. So this is just, some of this is from planning committee, obviously, but what had happened was we had gone through some consultation and a draft secondary planning package was prepared. That was presented to the PAC that we had up until December. And so there's some discussion, obviously, for almost a year with that group. We now have almost an entirely new group and a new member coming on. So we didn't have to start over, but there was a substantial amount of reading for those new members coming into the group. And this really just reflects that reality. So it's pretty blunt transition for some of them, but they all did really excellent. I think everyone would agree. So really what I was trying to do over the last few meetings is get some direction on some key issues as we've developed this work over the last year and a bit. So I'll just run through sort of what we've done, where we're at, and then some kind of bigger picture pieces that people should probably keep in mind. This was a bit of an update at the last meeting, and this will probably make more sense when I get into some of the maps, but the Kenny land side does have single ownership. And so the owners of that did attend our last planning committee meeting. There was a letter in that package as well. So I won't go into great detail, but essentially they were looking to move forward, have some type of sense of timeline. And I think provided a fairly good update, certainly from an engineering perspective, just around the road design and some of the shaping that would take place on that land. I think this is probably the most important piece at this point, is trying to get a sense of how this can move forward. That planning committee meeting that we had was important from my seat, just to confirm some of the directions and be able to finish the work. I said at the meeting that it's hard for me to sort of be in the middle of all these different stakeholders and not wanting to obviously bring a package to council at the end of this process, and everyone's sort of looking at me like, where did this come from? So this is part of that, and part of trying to bring everyone along as we work on this. So after that direction, what I sort of took away from the last meeting with the planning committee is that I am going to go and work on finishing a package. And I can touch on some of those directions later in this presentation, but just to give people a sense of the bigger picture on amending our planning documents. So we're opening up our municipal planning strategy. We're opening up our land use bylaw. That's really in the big picture what we're doing here. And we're enabling development on these lands that really don't have any development rights right now. So as part of that, within the legislation to amend your municipal planning strategy, there's a very specific process that we have to go through. A lot of you have been through that before. And in 2020, we would have went through that obviously with the new planning documents. So just as far as timeline goes, I'm looking to finish this package by the end of February. It might be before that, but that's what I'm hoping for. From there, we would sort of kick into what is the real legislative process. So we have to do a public participation meeting in front of the Planning Advisory Committee. That's sort of like a town hall meeting. We've done those before. And that's really for the benefit of the Planning Committee before they make a recommendation to hear comments on the finished package. We would also probably do something else at that time more from an accessibility perspective. Not everyone is comfortable coming and standing at the microphone. So we'd probably do some type of open house and have some other meetings. Planning committee would then actually recommend to council based on that package. We would then bring everything to council, including what we heard, and council would consider that at a committee of the whole. So that could stay a committee of the whole, or it can move forward to the public hearing. And in this case, we would actually do first reading because we're changing these pieces that are bylaws. And following the public hearing, a decision would be made. So again, we're opening up our municipal plan and concurrently changing the land use bylaw. And so these types of changes don't have an appeal mechanism. It's assumed that by going through this process, the appropriate diligence has been done. So this was just what we were going to discuss at PAC, what we did discuss. So I'll just quickly touch on these. What I was going to do then, or what I did, was touch on the big picture, and then the 3 bullet points there are what I was looking for direction on at that meeting. So these really form the basis of the type of development framework that we're working on. So it's really hard to move forward without knowing or having some sense of what type of density we're looking at. So there's a minimum of 10 units an acre. What type of housing mix we're looking for. Our municipal plan talks about having housing options. So that's the starting point, is having a mix of housing. The building height and view plane is obviously a big issue. The view plane from Reservoir Park is protected in policy, but has never been formally defined. So this is an important process to do that. And then there's an idea of formulating a village square closer to Main Street that I just wanted some direction on to keep pursuing that idea. So I can go through these sort of big picture pieces quickly, and then I'll wrap up if that sounds okay. Yeah. So we started this really in 2015 when we kicked off the planning document review. These lands were set aside on purpose, and a big part of that dialogue was around not making the same mistakes that we've made before. And so a lot of Wolfville has been sort of chopped up in little pieces, loop roads, cul-de-sacs, a lot of things that aren't really connected together or thought of together. So this was a great opportunity to look at the last 2 large pieces of land. And we kicked that off in 2020 into 2021, and we've been working on that since then. This is just some excerpts from the actual draft report. And I think it's important just to keep some of these in mind. So the premise of our comprehensive development zoning is that it provides an economic incentive to the developers by offering a level of higher density than we're used to. So a lot of the communities sort of built out at 2-3 dwelling units per acre. And the developers must incorporate some specific community objectives which increase the cost of development. So adding things to development increases the cost. I'm sure everyone understands that. Having better streets increases the cost, just as a simple example. So we're trying to work collaboratively with the community, with the developers to produce something that's of high quality and also represents the character of the community. So this is obviously a really important project, substantial change management that we're doing here, and a lot of expectations management. This is just a reminder at the council level. I've been showing this at planning committee, but this is really for council, that we're always trying to hit this sweet spot, and we really maybe never do, but this is certainly the aspiration as part of these bigger processes. We do talk about economic development regularly, and hopefully we'll have a more in-depth discussion as we move into the budget process and work on our operating plan for the coming year. But this project hits on all of these larger buckets that we've been talking about. There's lots of things to talk about within each of these, but primarily this, from an economic development perspective, is an expansion opportunity. So of our population, of our housing options, of our tax base, of additional commercial space, and obviously that funnels down to other areas. Certainly from a tourism perspective, this could have some accommodation. This could have some type of experiential opportunity as part of the project. Just kind of zooming out to the whole town. The main point that I want to make here is just really at the bottom for council's benefit is that there are other pieces of undeveloped land, primarily the 3rd phase of the West End. And so people will be looking at the development rights that are established here and looking to perhaps apply them or ask council to apply them to other areas of town. So I think we need to be cognizant of that as we move forward. Obviously, we are looking at this just in terms of the East End, but we have to look at how that impacts the rest of the town and what that will mean. This is something that we've talked a lot about. So this is just for the councilors' benefit that aren't on PAC. So we have done some traffic analysis and we've run some traffic models as part of a full build out at about 20 units per acre. And I'll show you some of the pro forma work that we've been doing. And some of this was also based on some preliminary discussion we've had with the province around an interchange at Maple Avenue. We think at this stage, unless there's completely new information that we're being presented, what I've been saying is that it's very unlikely that we're going to get an interchange. So what we've been working on, what council's been, I think, really committed to is providing some viable alternatives for moving around the town other than people getting in their vehicles. So I think that's going to be a big part of this and making this a success in the long term. This isn't something that's happening next year. This is a build out over 10, 20 years. So this is just showing some of the work in progress. This is the draft report we presented in November. It shows some of the consultation. I'm sure a lot of you attended the work that we did at Lightfoot and Wolfville over a number of days. We did some online pieces and we've received feedback on Wolfville Blooms, plus meeting with different stakeholders over the last year. So just to show the work a little bit here, we do start with doing what I call hand drawing or developing concepts just to see what can be done on the land, what areas can actually be built upon, and also looking at what areas cannot be built upon, obviously, and dealing with development constraints, which are, there's quite a few on these lands. So we get to a point where we're working on actual buildings, making assumptions on how big these buildings are, putting footprints down, so we can realistically work with the landowners on what's possible and translate this into a development framework in the land use bylaw. So actually saying what can be built where, how big it can be, how far away it has to be from other things. We've sort of iterated on this. This is another idea on the right there that a developer sort of provided us late before the December meeting. So we've had to work that in. And we're kind of working on this at this point as a zoning framework. So I've taken the buildings off of this because this is really what we're doing at this point is we're not saying a building must go exactly here and look exactly like this. We're working on a zoning framework that defines where different types of housing options, and certainly a mix is being provided here or being proposed, will be sited on these lands. So on the Kenny lands, just to give a bit of an overview, the road network comes off Maple Avenue and connects into Bishop and goes towards what is sort of the actual Kenny farm. This sort of red line defines what area is being looked at for development. So the road loops up the hill and we're proposing a connection into what is called the Maple Ridge lands across the compost facility, essentially. So we're doing some preliminary investigation down there. This would obviously come across this town-owned parcel that we have here. There's also opportunity to create development sites along that road frontage when that road would be completed. The other side is a little more complicated because of the different landowners. And so we have 4 owners on this side. But the big change that we've done is there's a single public road running north-south, which allows a bit more of clustering of buildings and a bit more lot depth to provide access into lands that would provide for a lot of different housing options. So whether that be apartment buildings or townhomes up in that area. And going towards Main Street, there's an idea for a mixed use village square, which I can show a concept of today. This again is just showing some of the sort of number crunching that we do to get this average units per acre on larger pieces of land like this. So we're making assumptions which translate into some of the work that you've seen with all these buildings on it. So we're actually counting buildings, counting floors. This is, AutoCAD layout that, geometrically works, so to speak. But really what we're trying to get down to here is how many units per acre are reasonable on these lands and how many people would be there, how much commercial space. So you can see some of that summary at the bottom. Again, this is conceptual, and from my perspective, really helps us work with the developers much more proactively, and tries to deliver, I think, what's in the planning documents and what council wants, what PAC is looking to achieve. So this is just the translation of that. And so I can just quickly touch on the areas, maybe just say where we landed quickly. So on density and housing mix, I was asking the question to the planning committee around, is the mix of housing that we're showing here appropriate? I think people generally agree. There's a lot of different housing types possible in this framework that we're presenting. And were we okay with this 15 to 20 units per acre overall? Understanding that we have to further refine these concepts that we're bringing forward in the final package and provide some different rationales. This was supported by the committee. I don't know if Isabel or Mayor want to.
Comfortable level for most of the committee.
Listened to it and it sounded like 15 seemed.
And just so people kind of understand how this is done, we're looking at units per acre overall on almost 80 acres of land. So, and this is on average. So you can sort of zoom in on 3 or 4 acres at a time, and that number will be much higher. You might get on a certain segment of the development, 70, 80, 90 acres, units per acre. But we're looking at an average, just so everyone understands. The view plane and the building height. Within the package, I hope everyone had a chance to look at, there is sort of a line drawn on a picture, just to show the understanding of the view plane. And so I was mostly looking to confirm that. And so that has been confirmed generally. And we've drafted an actual view plane sort of regulatory framework that needs a bit more work. I note here that, this view plane continues past what is the planning area onto Main Street. So, sorry, we haven't really turned our minds to that yet, but we're going to. And I think generally with the view plane, there's some more work that needs to really show what it looks like. And so we're looking to do some 3D modeling to actually show what it would look like. I think there was some trepidation on what it looks like from the view plane, even when things are outside of it, particularly to the right of it as you're looking to Blominen. So we're looking to address some of that with additional work. And the building height, I think there's an openness to sort of look at it and again, bring back more information on what these buildings would actually look like on the site. I think it's hard to ask everyone when we're looking at a bird's eye view with building footprints to give us a firm direction. So there was an openness to sort of looking at the work up to 6 or 7 stories under certain conditions. And so that's what we're proceeding with at this point. I don't know if you want to add anything again on this one. And then the last piece was just on the Village Square idea close to Main Street. So we've actually done some additional work and done some drawing to illustrate this idea, because I realize it's a bit of a stretch for people to imagine what a mixed use area could look like. So this is a really positive public space framed by buildings. So giving people a third place to gather, potentially with some type of commercial. It could be also some type of experience-based programming in here as well, just given the location with Lightfoot and Wolfville and where things are going in that realm. And the direction here again was to keep proceeding with this. I think from a land use bylaw perspective, if we do want to achieve this, there's quite a bit of additional work that's needed. Conversations with landowners and fairly prescriptive zoning that would be put in place if this is the type of thing we're looking to achieve. So yeah, this was just the question to the committee, and that's where we ended. I think I'll stop there, and I don't know if Isabel or Wendy want to add.
I don't have anything to add. Isabel, do you want to add?
I just want to go back to the comment that Director Lake made about the 3D modeling. I think that that's going to be a very important step because it is very difficult to look at these flat drawings. And I think back to the work that we did as council when we were looking at the location for the new town hall library and how important that exercise was when we did the actual 3D modeling. It really informed at least my decision on where to go. And I think, and that is really important here, not only for the view plane, but when we look at the height, because it's one thing to look at what exists right now, for example, in Woodman's Grove, tower, single homes. It's very difficult to imagine when you create that kind of mix, because this is a very ambitious project. You know, we're not creating a suburb of single family homes that are 2 stories. We're creating a really new concept of mixed housing in a way that I think is very exciting, but very difficult, I think, to conceive if we don't really have any concrete examples to go by. So I just wanted to, clarify that and indicate my support for trying to move next to this 3D modeling as soon as it's possible.
Are there any members of council who have questions or comments on the Director Lake's presentation? Councillor McKay.
Thanks. So this is just basically an update. PAC will have, I did listen to it, as I said, just to see where they sort of landed in recommendations and understanding it was a new committee. So probably a lot for them to get up to speed fairly quickly on, especially to make recommendations. But so this is just for information purposes. And now PAC will go back and have a more fulsome discussion, because it seemed like that discussion was basically to get to the answers to the questions that you needed to move forward. So it seemed like it was a little bit, just from a listening point of view, a little bit just, okay, we need to get answers to this, so let's move on. So it wasn't about the whole thing. It was just about the things you needed to get to move it forward. So they'll come back with a recommendation. So the next meeting will be a little more conversational. I just didn't feel it was that. So that's why I wrote that.
Yeah, we're kind of moving down a funnel. So at this point, I was at a key piece where if we're going to actually write new sections of the land use bylaw, it's hard to write those without sort of knowing what the parameters are. So I'm trying to get those parameters to bring something back that I can step people through in more detail. Understanding the comments that it's really hard to look at a plan without the detail that we need. Yeah.
So there's no motion on the,
No,
nothing,
this is just information.
No feedback from us, basically, just questions. Okay.
There, in the meeting before, there were, I'm going to say 12, maybe 15 things that to be discussed. These are the 3 or 4 that Councillor got a promotion. Director Lake needed a promotion, yes, depending on your perspective. But Director Lake needs to look at amendments for the MPS and the LUB, and also I think for the to help Fathom move their report along. I'm going, some of the things some of the other items dealt with parks, and maybe some of our discussion this week will help Fathom, who is working on both projects, with kind of park connections. And I know we've had some discussion at PAC about built heritage and some of that information that will inform the secondary plan. So that continues. I will say that the developer and one of his support staff, I guess you'd call him, were here at PAC. The engineer did a presentation. I know that they are eager to move on this, and I think I respect that. I respect the need for them to get on with what they're doing. So I think we probably will be pushing on this through till the spring. All right, thank you, Director Lake. Appreciate that. Oh, sorry,
I got a
Council-
question for Devin, I guess.
Sorry.
I just, as
Have to
far
be,
as.
have to be quick on the buttons.
Yeah,
Director
sorry.
Lake, don't leave yet.
Yeah, don't leave that, yeah, as far as putting the road across through the well, the landfill or the, whatever you want to call our property up there. Are we gonna be able to get that organized enough to let him do something this spring? You really think that's feasible?
Alex is reviewing drawings, and so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of work to do
Yeah,
to
it's a lot of work.
get there. There's geotechnical work as well to establish where and how that road could go in. The section that you're talking about on the compost site.
Yeah, specifically up
Yeah.
there. The rest of it is not particularly complicated as far as a road, but that is very complicated with the water flow and.
Yes. So there's a lot of engineering to do there. But I mean, the message really is we're concurrently doing that because it's a substantial amount of work. The road location, I don't think will change. Sort of everyone's in agreement on generally where that road location will be. So we're moving that to another level of detail as we move the overall concept forward. Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're good. All right, that moves us to info report on quarterly council attendance report. This is the first time we've had this. This is based on a new policy. I don't know if there is too much to say, except, and there has been some correspondence back and forth with council and with the clerk. We are, so what the public and what council is seeing are what we call committees of council. Council sits on other regional committees, which I consider a committee of council. It's our agreement to be on those committees. And we have, the clerk has set up an Excel chart on our Teams link that and given instructions so that this will, I assume, be updated, and in the future, council is on their responsibility to fill in that chart so that for future reports like this, your participation in whether it's the marsh bodies or the trails committee or Kings Point to Point or our IMSA with King's Transit and with Valley Waste, and all of those committees will be included. And I just looked, I don't think they are on yet, but so just to tell people that these are exclusive of meetings that were not what have been termed committees of council, but are actually committees that council members sit on within the region. So are there any comments on this? This is an information report. Okay, hearing none. We will move on to committee reports external. And I'll just ask each person who was the author of the report, and I'm not sure in all cases I know, Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, that's Councillor McKay. Is that your committee? No, that's Councillor Ingham's committee.
Yeah, that was my last meeting. I
was,
really did
okay.
enjoy that meeting. It was a great committee, our committee. It's a great committee to be on as a first time counselor and what I learned. So I pass it over to Councillor McKay and we will have discussions moving forward, I'm sure.
Okay. Does this mean? Because I'll put it back on. So this would have been Deputy Mayor, your last WBDC meeting? Do you have anything else to add?
Indeed. I just want to, first of all, thank Councillor Elliott for attending that meeting in December. Councillor made a wonderful presentation regarding the proposed mural that we're looking, or that the Public Art Committee is hoping to move forward with. And this was to ensure that we have constant communication between the WBDC and the murals that they have received COA funding to put up on 2 locations, which, by the way, have been very positively been received. And to note that there was discussion around Night of Lights and what can be done to perhaps increase more participation by some of the businesses for that kind of event, because that actually went down from last year. So there's some ideas developed on that or discussed on that. And there's been a significant increase on social media with respect to WBDC and Wolfville in general, which is very interesting because now Tammy is really looking after that for the WBDC. And so it's an interesting development given the change in management of those sites. So I want to say I very much enjoyed my time on WBDC, and I think Councillor McKay will do a great job and enjoy taking over this month.
Good.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Ingham, Diversity Kings. Anything to add?
Just as submitted, thank you.
And the IMSA agreement for Valley Waste and King's Transit. I have nothing to add. Are there any questions? Thank you. All right, that brings us, we have two council requests for agenda items, and remind council, we don't discuss this today. We decide, however, as a group, if we want to discuss it in the future. And the first one is actually one that I submitted. Let me get down to it. Here it does say, I didn't realize I had to fill in the top. It just says counselor. It was my submission. It occurs to me, I know we have a policy, so this would be a direction if we approve discussing this in the future. This would be a direction to staff to come back with a standard operating procedure and SOP on how we manage new committee members who are not members of council. There is something in the policies that says new committee members get receive training. I don't know if that's happening, and so even just to have feedback that's happening right now this month, we have a number of new committee members on a variety of committees. I know at the accessibility committee yesterday, Councillor Ingham was looking for and got a vice chair. Now it turns out that the vice chair probably has experience in chairing, but it occurred to me that maybe some of the people who didn't put their hands up may have thought, like, I don't know what I would do if I was sitting in that chair. So I thought that was important. So basically, if council is in agreement, we would send this to staff to come back with a report on how we are going to, how we and they are going to roll this out in a more formal manner. Something that I didn't add in here, and I had some talk with the CAO about maybe adding this to that discussion when we have it. And another thing came up this morning. We have two items. Back in January or February, we talked about who could be the vice chair of PAC. And we had a discussion here. Some of us felt it should be a member of council, in which case maybe it is appointed as we appoint the committee positions. In the past, I think it has been elected. One of the problems, and it may or may not be specific to PAC, is that that's a fairly technical committee with a lot of background that members of council would come to know. It may be hard for a community person to step into the position of chair for that committee if the deputy mayor was not able to do that. We currently do not have a vice chair on that committee, and we said we would deal with this before February's PAC meeting. And that, if you recall, we left the meeting last winter with members of council get back to the CAO with your preference. That didn't happen, so that's still hanging out there. So I would like to add that to this. And Councillor Ingham mentioned this morning that we don't have alternates for all of our committees, particularly committees that are regional committees. In some cases, most cases, committees of council, we have multiple people who are sitting on those committees, so we're probably okay. So with those two additions, who can be a VP, mostly of PAC, but of any committee of council is, should that be a member of council? And also, should we have alternates for all committees? I would like to put that forward in this motion, and the motion, I don't have my glasses on. Is there a motion in here? It's just to direct it to the council directs staff to develop a standard operating procedure to support the council committee's policy. And I think we could add those things in there. Is it the pleasure of council to move that forward to a future discussion of committee of the whole, not to a future, not to directing staff right away? Councillor Ingham?
Oh, your light is, oh, my light's on.
Oh, sorry, Councillor McKay?
So,
Sorry, you can be next.
so we're not going to get into the meat of this at the moment, but can I ask a question about, so an SOP though, we don't approve. Council does not
Good
approve
point.
SOPs, because I remember that from something else. So I would entertain the discussion, but I think that it should be, whatever we put in should be part of the committees of council policy, not an SOP, because I think we would want to approve it and have it as part of the policy.
So
that
you're
make sense?
absolutely correct. This is just, do we want to discuss this in the February, this issue? And then we could come up, you're right, with a more, either this or a more appropriate motion at the time.
Happy to have the discussion as whatever it looks like coming back.
I concur, happy to have the discussion moving forward, yes.
Okay. Do we have to move that or? No.
You just
Okay.
provide direction.
So we're providing direction to staff, to the CAO to bring this forward in February for discussion. And the second one, I will turn to Councillor Elliott, because this was your submission to, do we want to have a discussion on basic income? Not today, but at a future council meeting. Your light, Wendy?
Thank you. Given the fact that this is very topical right now, and people are saying that the minimum wage in Nova Scotia needs to go up again, I just think it would be a healthy discussion. It was raised initially by citizen Roger Tatlock, who's here this morning. And I think it's something that we could look at in terms of writing letters, not doing anything. But I must say, I've been doing some research and I found this document from BC, which looks at the municipal role in food systems. Well, of course, people can't afford food right now because they're not making enough and it's all one big ball of wax. But I was really surprised to see what in British Columbia they see as the role of municipalities in terms of food systems. So could be quite a discussion, but I think it's one that we ought to have.
I guess we should check our MGA to see if we may have a different MGA.
No doubt, but
So are we comfortable? Would we like to have that discussion moved to a future council committee of the whole meeting? Yep, we're good. Okay, so those, that was easy. So both of those, February, I know, the only thing I would say I will work with the CAO. I know February is a full day meeting. We're in budget. We want to look at our have a regroup on our strategic plan. So it's possible that they might get moved on to a later meeting, but I will certainly have that discussion with the CAO in terms of that agenda. We have before we move to in camera, is there anybody else who would, Noel, like to speak for another 3 minutes on public input?
It's on. Is that on?
Should be a little green light that I can see from here. And I see
You-
the green light, so it's on.
You'd think I'd know how to do this by now. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I will be as fast as possible, and I do have a written copy of these to hand to Laura, correct? With regards to the Recreation Task Force update scheduled to be discussed in camera at the end of this meeting, I hope council will take into account the following thoughts on supporting a pool in Wolfville for the Wolfville community. 1, how does investing Wolfville taxpayer dollars in a recreation facility outside of town between New Midas and Kentville, I've been told, is the potential location. I don't know if that's correct or not. Perhaps it's being considered.
Yeah,
Nice.
that is not public. There's
No, I
been no
understand
public
that.
release of information like
I
that.
understand that. Okay, but how does it support the stated environmental goals of both Wolfville and Acadia? How does creating a whole new building and parking lot meet our carbon output goals, especially if patrons will be obligated to drive to and from a workout? 2, shouldn't a recreation facility for our town be situated in a place where parents can, with confidence, tell their children to hop on their bike with their friends and go to the rec center for a swim or play ball, and then bike or walk home? Do we really want to put parents in a situation where their child's recreation becomes another huge time commitment of driving them to a rec facility, waiting for them, and then driving home? A review of the MOU between Wolfville and Acadia could better ensure Wolfville's ability to manage and deliver recreation programming within the town limits. 3, a complete set of recreation options within the town's borders is a huge drawing card for the population density Wolfville has stated it expects to see within the next decade. If we build a whole new subdivision in the East End and put our recreation facilities outside of town, how do we expect that decision to impact the population growth we are planning to facilitate in the East End development? 4, when you cross-reference the number of communities in Nova Scotia with populations similar to Wolfville, and I'm going with the number 5,000 or less, with the recreation facility of Nova Scotia's listing of communities with pools, you'll find that out of the 18 municipalities with similar population, 11 have outdoor pools and 8 have indoor 25-meter pools. This suggests that a community the size of Wolfville can support an indoor pool, given that it's properly managed and programmed. If Wolfville's population really is going to double in the next decade, then supporting a community pool should be no problem. 5, there's been no survey of the current public users of the Acadia Athletic Center to ask whether or not they want to move their recreation choices outside of the town. An in-depth survey of current AC users should be undertaken before Wolfville commits substantial taxpayer dollars to moving recreation facilities outside of town. 6, when one considers the amount of money Acadia has accepted from the federal, provincial, county, municipal governments to renovate, restructure, and build additions to the Acadia Athletic Center, a strong argument may be made for the responsibility of Acadia to provide consistent, reliable, adequate recreation programming hours to the public. Public money has already paid for much of that facility. It should be the de facto recreation facility for Wolfville and the surrounding communities. 7, swimming pools provide people who are trying to maintain independent living skills with the opportunity to safely exercise in a way that maintains or increases range of motion in their joints and strength within that range of motion. Indoor pools provide a supervised area where patrons with mobility issues can independently exercise in ways that are not possible outside of an aquatic environment for many individuals. The province should be presented with the idea that pools provide an important public health service and that they should be supported in part by provincial health funding. 8, has Acadia considered that if it closes this pool, the 38 varsity swimmers will likely find another university to attend that supports the sport of their choice? Is it worth closing the pool to lose 38 tuition fees for the 4 or 5 years a student is an athlete? Would Acadia even consider doing the same thing to the hockey team, the basketball teams, the soccer teams? If Acadia wants to be considered a world-class university, it needs to support its own pool. Anyways, just a few thoughts is that I will submit to Laura, our town clerk. One last question, and if I can direct this to Devon Lake. It seems like,
I'm sorry, this is not a question and answer period. If
no, I don't expect to get an answer.
Okay.
It's just a question. I'm putting it
Okay.
out there. It seems like the map that we have been shown for the East End development, where the road crosses over from Maple Avenue by the compost recycling depot, it seems to cross over the bottom part of the trail system established for mountain bikers in Reservoir Park. If that is correct, how do we plan on dealing with a potential conflict between bikers, vehicles, and off-lead dog walkers? Because that is an off-lead park.
Okay.
It's just a
I'm
question.
sure you can take
Yeah.
that up with Director Lake
Oh, yeah. That's-
offline. Okay, thank
yeah.
you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All
Appreciate
right,
everybody considering this.
we're going to adjourn. So what I'm going to suggest is first we have a 5-minute recess. If anybody wants to get a coffee and or use the facilities and then come back, and then we will move in camera.